What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are on to the fourth and final installment of our Every Team in the League mailbag. It's the second half-ish of the Western Conference. We did Dallas through the Memphis Grizzlies on the first part. Go check it out if you have not already. We are now on to going to begin with I'll get this right, Minnesota Timberwolves.
Bang.
I'm so all over the place, but I do have to ask you, Grant, since I last spoke to you about 27 seconds ago, how are you doing?
I'm doing just as well as I was then, maybe better, because we're on the home
Nice.
stretch, sort of. I don't know if you call this a home stretch, but we're beginning the second half of our Western Conference mailbag, and so that's a good place to be.
So do you want me to throw, and by the way, we're not going to blow through, but I just recorded an extensive podcast, 70 plus minutes on the Timberwolves. So we're not going to we've spent like 20 minutes on some of these teams. The Timberwolves just got 70 plus minutes. And so we have the one question, which is a great question, by the way, or we have a couple questions on the Timberwolves, but the first one comes from, I'll read it to you, Grant, since I know that you're just dying to get off some of these Minnesota Timberwolves takes that you have. First question comes from HP Burgie. What do the numbers say in a Nas Reed versus Cat argument? Is the team better when Nas plays? An interesting discussion topic for the present and future, and also interesting discussion because this was asked, believe it or not, before Towns suffered that lateral meniscus injury.
This pertinent to say the least, given what's happened with Cat. I will say, I'm not the biggest Cat fan, but this idea that like somehow they're better without him does not, and we'll go through the numbers, but like you're not better without a starter, just like taking him out of the equation. Like that's not really a thing.
This would be at risk of oversimplifying it if it wasn't too true. Who is your second best scorer now on this team with Karl-Anthony Towns out? It is Nas Reed, which is potentially problematic. And then your spacing falls off a cliff without Towns. Anthony Edwards is spectacular, so he's working through it. But like the way that defenses can just load up on him without fear of repercussion now, and it reached a point to where because Towns was out, I don't know if you saw any of that Clippers-Wolves game where they came back, but
I did,
the progression on social media was bonkers because there were people that wanted like Kyle Anderson to be shipped off the planet at that point. So
yeah, I mean, like the Reed versus Cat thing sort of invites comparison because like Reed can do some of the things that make Cat really good, which he's a big body that can space and he can put it on the floor and straight line drive. He just, Cat is like, it's like to the point of parody at this point, but like he maybe is the best high volume 3-point shooter among big guys ever. Like that's. You
also just outlined why so many people don't like him because he said that, which I'm not criticizing him for that.
He's grossly poor in the self-awareness department and like not coming off.
I would argue. No,
he is
okay,
but you can't say that. Like he shouldn't say that. Dirk, like at least let Dirk Nowitzki like fade from memory a little bit. Like you just don't. Anyway. So let's get to some of the numbers here. With Nas on the floor with Rudy Gobert, they're plus 13.9. The offense is not good. The defense is phenomenal. 100th percentile on defense, 41st offense. Gobert obviously just limits everything at the rim. So he's kind of the key to that group. The Towns and Gobert unit, which by the way, probably goes against starters a little more often. So you might want to look at like some luck adjusted stuff if you really want to dig into this, which we're not going to do. Plus 9.6 per 100. The offense is much better with Cat out there with Gobert, 77th percentile, 91st on defense, still good. Still obviously very good. Opponent shooting luck is not like jimmying with any of those numbers. So you're getting good results either way. The defense seems to be carrying the Reed Gobert minutes more so than the Cat Gobert minutes, but like you're basically plus 10 and better in both units. Cat by himself with no other bigs, plus 5.8 in not a lot of possessions, but that offense ironically sucks. 17th percentile. The defense is really good. It's shooting luck, 29% from three for opponents there. Thank you for pulling all these stats, by the way. It's making me sound very smart. If you have Reed out there by himself as the lone big, which doesn't happen that often either, 286 possessions, the Wolves are minus 11.9. The offense is awful, like second percentile. The defense is basically break even. So like you start considering the cost between Cat and Reed, like obviously that's a huge factor. It's just like, I don't see a scenario where the Timberwolves are anything but substantially worse with Cat out of the picture. That's not what this question's asking, but it's like Reed is a really good player, should be in the very short list conversation for sixth man of the year. He's not Karl-Anthony Towns. And so I guess like the question could be just like, well, who do they need? They need all of them. They need everybody. Like that's, it's not like Reed is going to step in and just replicate everything Cat does.
Whoa. They need all three of, they need three of their top six players.
I know, Dan. I know. But I really feel strongly about it.
We're not trolling Burgie here, by the way. I want to make that clear. we're not trolling the question asked. HB Burgie, this is a good question.
Yeah,
I think people outside of Minnesota are probably asking. The thing that I would add too, because you mentioned the money, which there's if they ever view Reed as a Towns replacement, it's not because Reed is better than Towns. It's because he's $30 million cheaper a year, and that's it. And I don't think, and I've said this before. I said it on the podcast with Kyle. I said it when people, because apparently I said something egregious way back. I probably did say it, but I like said that the Wolves had to trade or bust it up before next year. I'd be floored. And if I were fans, I'd be irate if they traded anyone from the top six before the 2025 deadline, because you have until the end of next year. Yep. I would even say the draft, but you have until the end of next year to cut your tax bill. And if you get to the trade deadline and see it's not working, okay. If it's still working, then you better see it through all, like you eat it for at least one more year after this. And so I don't think this is an imminent issue. And the final thing I'll say very quickly, I trust Towns to punish multiple layers of defense, even though he's part of the reason that the Wolves can be like bad when it comes to turnovers and bad passes and lost balls. But like on drives, if he needs to get by two different layers of defense, if you need him to work from the post, I'm going to trust that out of him more than Naz Reid. And I think he has improved enough defensively. He's slower in space, but part of the reason why Naz is quicker in space is because he can't do like typical center stuff. And if you have the right personnel around Rudy, I do think we've seen this season in some of those lone big lineups, he can do some of the regular big stuff when the right perimeter guys are in front of him. So if, again, I think this is the oversimplification, but if you view Reed as your Karl-Anthony Towns replacement, it's because you're trying to save money. And it's not because Reed is better than Towns.
Yeah, agree.
The next Wolves question that we have for you, Grant, they asked it specifically for you.
Oh, good.
Corey Cosma 8306. They didn't ask this specifically for you, but I want to make you feel good about yourself. If you guys don't think Rudy Gobert affects the shot attempts at the rim the same way Wemby does, why do you have Rudy above him in Defensive Player of the Year? Just curious, because if Wemby passes the eye test and leads the league in blocks and blocks plus steals, why not have him first?
I mean, a few reasons. Like I don't want to be put in the position. Who did I have to talk up last podcast? I can't remember. Russell Westbrook. I don't want to be put in the position of talking down Victor Wembanyama, because like the list of outlandish things we've said about him, all positive, is long, and I'm going to continue to add to it for the next hopefully 15 years. It's a full season award. Wembanyama was not this good defensively at the beginning of the year. He's going to run away with the blocks lead. That's true. I guess there's a few, like one. Gobert is the anchor of the best defense in the league by a mile. And Wembanyama is awesome, but the Spurs defense is not good. Wembanyama has not been the anchor of a really great defense like for 7 years. So I've some of this goes to track record. I think Wembanyama is probably like his potential is higher, which is wild because Gobert is the best defensive player like of this generation, at least among bigs. But
not according to Shaq.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from that. I don't know. I mean, it's a fair question because all we do is talk up Wembanyama, but I guess I struggle to say that Wembanyama is sort of as reliable and sturdy of a like defensive centerpiece. Like his spectacular plays are better than anybody's. But I think Gobert just has certainly like a level of know-how, positioning, like corporate knowledge, like just experience, all that stuff that like makes him just a more complete, like established, I keep using like reliable, sturdy, like it's pejorative. Like he's just, exactly what you're getting possession to possession, where Wembanyama is spectacular, but like is going to make more mistakes than Gobert is. And you just don't have the tracker. You don't have the team performance to back it up. That's not fair, really, because Wembanyama's supporting cast is awful.
And the Spurs defense
part of
is his strongest argument is just the Spurs are in like the 70th percentile of defense efficiency with him on the floor.
Yeah, he has to do so much more to make them like pretty good. So it's a fair question, but I don't really. It's not making me like reassess. Do I think Wembanyama all year has been a better defender than Gobert?
When you're looking at it wire to wire, and the other thing too is just, and again, this is me legitimately throwing it out there, the 500-minute differential here, where that's like Gobert's 500 minutes on Wemby about. I would think that matters, especially because Rudy Gobert is playing in more important games as well. And like, doesn't that factor into it? It's like, I'm not saying this, but it's like how many teams are like foot off the gas against the Spurs at points this year?
Yeah.
So, or how much of Wemby's best plays have come when like he's helped the Spurs get some pretty high leverage moments, but Rudy Gobert has played in more high stakes games this year than Victor Wembanyama. That's not a spicy take. Every single game is higher stakes.
Right. Spurs do not play games with stakes and have not really all year. Okay, so we got the Pelicans next. How do you want to?
I have to say it. The Pelicans remain my kink. That's what it's become on this. The Pelicans.
Oh man. How do you want to approach this? We have several questions, but I know there was a particular topic you wanted to get into with them. So do you want to just go to the shooting and the defense, or do you want me to run down the list of questions for you?
They have, so I think we should go to did we have two that kind of stepped on the toes of each other, or no, it was I think some of these can be a little bit quicker. So Pito, let's start with Pito's one.
All right. So Pito asks, take your best shot at trying to understand who this team should be. A point Zion central team, a BI central team. Can Zion and Brandon Ingram actually coexist? Should they be a defense or offense oriented team?
So I think that's a great question. I do think they can coexist, but I think if you're not going to have them running pick and rolls with each other, then you need to get just a ton of stretch around them in the form of just raw 3-point shooting and maybe another twitchy off the dribble 3-point threat, or there needs to be that vertical spacer guy who's also a really good rim protector. Because like, I think that's the way to complement them or to maximize the talent around them. I do think the best version of this team is with either point Zion, just because, but he's functionally more limiting when he doesn't have the ball than Brandon Ingram is, especially if you're not going to use him as the primary screener. That's just where I'm at with that. However, I would also say, and maybe this is I don't even know if this is controversial. It's either the best version of this team is either with point Zion or point this player isn't on the team yet. And that's not, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's what I was going to ask you was, because I'm at least tempted to go along with like, it should be point Zion. That needs to be like the foundation of your team. Is CJ McCollum on that team? Like, is that what you want at that position? Or do you need like a Herb Jones that can also drive and handle the, you know what I mean? Like, because if you're going to do the Zion at the point thing, and maybe like, what's that going to do for your defensive matchups? It puts McCollum in tough positions. It's kind of like we talked about with Dallas and how Luka is at a position where you want him to guard like a 3-4. That's a tough matchup usually. And you got to like move things around. If it's not McCollum, who is it? Can it be McCollum? Like, just because obviously the stretchy big and the rim protecting big, like, yeah, we said that forever. Miles Turner, on and on. Is McCollum the right point guard for that, or whatever? If he's not the point guard, is McCollum the right guy at like what would otherwise be the one going forward in the kind of look you're talking about?
And he's so good that it's been so good this year, and you have to credit him for really juicing up his 3-point volume.
Threes, yeah.
Trey Murphy coming on ends up being a big deal for them. So maybe you have but look, if you told me this team came out of the West, it wouldn't surprise me. I do think ultimately, and this will get, so the offense or defense, should they be an offense or defense team? I actually think because of how imperfect they can be on offense, it makes sense that it doesn't make sense when you're looking at their personnel. Like this current team, I think needs to actually hang its hat on defense. But like if you're building out future iterations, just because of who your best player is going to be, whether it's Zion or whether it's Ingram in that, like, and even this, like having, like, I think it's probably leaning offense first. Like that's what, if you're making new additions, I'm catering to the offense. But we'll get into that because we have another defensive question. So yeah, I think the other thing with what you mentioned looming over all this is it might be point Zion, but you have to ask yourself, is he healthy enough? Will his prime last long enough to lean all the way into that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that hangs over everything. So because like if you build a point Zion team, that is a specific ass team with like guys that are going to, have really certain jobs that'll be different than they'd be on like a quote unquote normally constructed team.
Yeah.
And then if the guy that's at the center of all that is like maybe not going to hold up or is going to miss time or have conditioning issues or whatever, which for the time being, like pretty good stretch on that front for Zion. But like it's so precarious to build like an unusual roster around an unusual player that if he's not there, like then what the hell is this team? Like things don't make sense anymore. You kind of almost have to build like a totally different like second you I don't know there's risk there, but it's like I still think that like putting the ball in Zion's hands unless and until he becomes like a great off ball cutter or a shooter, like that's just the way it's got to go, right? Like I don't know what else you really do to maximize the talent.
Right.
um
And I do think that the two can coexist, and they might look, they're doing it right now. I mean, like the numbers, their starting lineup numbers have started to turn. And I think it's probably about futzing and fiddling more on the margins. But there is a case to be made that if you are trying to really improve your offensive ceiling or maybe even playoff, we have to see what their playoff offense looks like. If you want to playoff proof your offense or create more chemistry, the glue tying all that together probably isn't on the team yet, if that's the
yeah,
route you want to go.
yeah. Okay, so next question here from Yankees Man 77. Pelicans going to make a move this summer to bring in a new center, either by trade or free agent, or are they going to sign Jonas Valanciunas to a new deal? If not, say they move on from him. Who do you see as not the new starting five next to Zion BI for next season? Like, what's it look like? I guess focusing on the center position. Like, what do you think they should do? What can they do? What would you like them to do?
I think so. They're like 12 and a half, $13 million under the tax without accounting for Jonas Valanciunas' next contract. And so you could say, all right, well, if you just plug in, maybe that's the number he gets. He's earning, what is he at this year? I mean, that would be a pay cut. So you would think that he would have more. And you're also in that point, that doesn't include, a new contract for Jose Alvarado, if they want to go that route with him, Najee Marshall.
It's going to have
And
a
so like
first
this
round
team,
draft pick too.
right. Well, no. So the estimate for this is like it has the Lakers draft pick in there. I think they have the right to defer it. So I mean, you could save some money there.
Yeah.
And which they probably will defer it just because that could save them like $4 million. But my point being, you don't have money to spend on a big wig center. So I would just keep Jonas Valanciunas or try and work out unless you have another trade lined up. But you don't have all this expendable matching salary necessarily, unless you view CJ McCollum as expendable. Sure, you have Larry Nance. Maybe you're willing to go. You can get to numbers where it's like, oh, if you're step ladder with Nance and Dyson Daniels. I think the safest course would be to figure out a way to keep Jonas Valanciunas, and then that'll, will this team pay the tax? You have to ask yourself that. If you're going to make another splash at center, if you let Jonas Valanciunas walk, I don't know who the free agent. Like you don't have the money to go after Isaiah Hartenstein, who would be an interesting fit here. And then there's just like there's not a ton of talented. Yeah, Nick Claxton would be kind of interesting. There'd be spacing limitations there, though. You can't afford him either. So you're looking at like, oh, Daniel Tice. Like, could we get him? And so if you're gonna upgrade the center position or make it materially different, it has to happen on the trade market. When I go through, like, you can come up with names, and I know a lot of Wolves fans love the Jared Allen idea, and maybe the Cavs get to a point where they want to move off one of their bigs. I will say, I kind of consider vertical spacing overrated in this context. I don't know how you
Yeah.
feel about that, to where I prefer, yes, I want a big who protects the rim and stretches the floor. But just like, if I'm going to really give up a lot of assets for this team, it has to be for that big. And yes, they're rare, borderline non-existent. I like Jared Allen works, and especially at his number. So maybe it's like, well, we're giving up this equity and he's so cheap for the next couple of years relative to what players of his caliber would make. But like, there's not a name out there. Like, it's the idea, like, it's like Miles Turner as concept and like
Right.
been there, done that type deal. So, and they might just, I think a lot of what happens in the playoffs will probably inform what they try, because you could convince me that they enter the offseason with the priority of we need like a real floor general in here rather than like focusing on the 5 spot, depending on how the postseason unfolds. And so I feel bad not having a great answer to who should they go after at the center position. But if they do anything, I'm assuming it's just going to happen on the trade market. And I just don't, there's no name. I don't know if you can think of a name that springs to mind. Like maybe Dallas would be willing to trade one of their bigs. Like, are they going to trade you Maxi Kleba? And he's also just not the 35-minute per game answer either, 30-minute per game answer.
I think it's telling that you got to Daniel Tice's name real quick in the list of options. So
well, that's what they can afford in free agency is what.
Yeah,
like,
it's a bare. Okay, so this is where we really got to get to. This has been the topic. I don't know, not du jour, but like of the last couple weeks around NBA nerd circles and Pelicans circles, particularly from this is from Trey Real Stroker Murphy. How does the Pelicans 3-point defense work? It can't be just luck that their opponents have consistently the worst 3-point percentage for 2 straight seasons, while they also give up the most 3-point attempts. What's going on? I wrote about this today for something else. I've been listening to a lot of discussions about it. We got to talk about this.
Oh, you wrote about it. Did you want to take it then?
No, it's your notes are very similar. I mean, I'm a cynic, and I'm my kink is not the Pelicans, so I feel like I'm just a little bit more down on them than you. And I trust in a lot of smarter people than me who have essentially said, there are some things you can do as a defense to limit 3-point accuracy of your opponents. One of the main ones being make sure really good shooters do not take those threes. And one of the other ones being try not to allow really wide open threes. The Pelicans, the deep dives in the data just suggest that like some of that might be happening. And the 2-year window where this is happening 2 years in a row now is persuasive just because it grows the size of the sample. So you can't dismiss it as small sample luck as easily. I still think it's mostly luck. I still think if opponents are missing wide open threes more often against you than against any other team, odds are you're lucky. And it's not like you haven't figured out how to play. Like Willie Green's a good coach. I don't know if he has schooled the team on defensive telepathy. Like, I don't think that's a thing. So part of it, I said I wasn't going to take over this thing, but like, I think part of it is that maybe some of the numbers we have are not accounting for like the length of the Pelicans roster. Like maybe wide open shots are not as wide open if it's Trey Murphy or Brandon Ingram or Herb Jones closing out against you with like 9-foot wingspans. But I skew more towards the Pelicans have been lucky defensively, and I think their defense will regress as opponents make threes at expected rates. So yeah, take that where you want.
If you're looking at 3-point defense specifically and say they've been lucky, but I think the way that they are able to get set is like a big part of why their defense is maybe overachieved relative to personnel. There's luck involved with the 3-point. I mean, you mentioned it. Like their opponents are shooting 36% on wide open threes. That's by far and away the lowest mark in the league. You can say they're selective about who gives them up, but when you go back and watch, what I do think, you already mentioned the length thing, and the contest stuff is right, but there are 2 things that stand out to me. Is the level of pressure they're able to put on because they navigate screens. And so they're within proximity of these shot takers, that they're going to have these where maybe it's classified as open, but because of the wingspans of some of these guys, that it's actually not 6+ feet. The other thing for me, only the Heat and the Bulls are better at forcing opponents to take threes later in the shot clock. So 7 seconds or less remaining on the shot clock. Statistically speaking, those shot percentages on average are going to be lower than if they're coming in, because the reason you're taking shots early in the shot clock is you're open.
You got a good one.
The Pelicans might give up a lot of wide open threes, but if you're also forcing opponents to defend deep into the shot clock, how many of those threes are grenades to shooters? You mentioned this at the top. They're not very good. And so I think that's been a big deal about their defense, which comes back to one, getting set, the fact that they're able to fight, and you have guys like Herb Jones, you have guys like Trey Murphy, you even have just like, and I think this has been the other thing that I noticed is Brandon Ingram has gotten better defensively. I think he's been smarter with his closeouts. He's been able to shoot better gaps, smarter with his help. And I think that's where the Pelicans have, and I did not dig into the data on this, so I didn't look at like what's happening from the corners. But when you look at like what CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram have done as helpers when they are in the corners, and maybe even Zion Williamson at points, they've been able to like pick and choose where they're going to put the ball pressure. And if you trust those guys to close out, or if you're helping off of the right shooters, I think that adds the element of, okay, we're actually helping deflate this 3-point percentage by design. I say all this knowing we saw it with the Knicks a couple years ago. That stuff will normalize. There's luck here. There's absolutely luck here. But I don't think, like, if you look at the Pelicans defense as a whole, and a lot of what I said applies to, I think, their overall defense, because take 3-point pointers out of the equation. only the Bulls have opponents taking a larger share of their overall shots inside 7 seconds of the shot clock.
Mhm.
That's a big deal, I would say. And so it's their ability to get set, which that comes back to their offense, but also just the commitment to getting back in transition, which they've, for the most part, consistently had under Willie Green. All that stuff makes a big difference. And so if you want to say the Pelicans 3-point defense has been more luck than not, I will concede that. But I do think they've done things that go into it. As a larger point, I don't think their overall defensive standing is completely founded around luck. I know it looks wonky because of the personnel, but I think that they have done things to earn, what are they, like 6th right now in points allowed per possession or whatever it is? So that's where I'm at with the Pelicans defense. And it's why, I mean, it's one of the many reasons why they are my kink, because even their offensive imperfections or the nights where it's, look, they're going through a kind of a mini tear right now. They've beat up on some inferior opponents, but like we've seen stretches where they all of a sudden kind of just deviate from what's working and it doesn't make sense, but you can still almost trust them to refine their peak or to tread water because their defense has been so good.
And I think too, like it's kind of exciting to think about because like their process, at least in terms of just the shots they allow, goes against conventional wisdom. Because like in terms of what are the pillars of a good defense, typically right now in the NBA, it's like don't let opponents shoot threes. Like just don't do that. Like that's the Bucks under Budenholzer. Like that was their whole thing. We funnel everything to the middle. We let the big guys deal with it. Typically, I correct me if I'm wrong. I think just as a broad generalization, the best defenses limit opponent 3-point attempt frequency. The Pelicans don't do that.
Well,
It's interesting to think that like conventional wisdom is only right until it isn't. And at some point, we could be in an era where like it's actually okay to let opponents shoot a bunch of threes as long as you get really good at, you know, contesting and letting the wrong guys, making sure the wrong/right guys are shooting those threes. It's fun to think about the Pelicans maybe being on like the vanguard of something because it's 2 years now. So like that has to at least get your attention a little bit. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but like that's the interesting side of this to me is that it goes against like normal good defensive process.
Well, I think you're touching on a trend too. I mean, this isn't I'm talking about just this season. So if you go through the teams that are the best at limiting opponent 3-point attempts, I'll read them off to you. I'll read you the top 5 and you guess how many top 10 defenses are in there. Indiana, Denver, Detroit, Washington, Portland, followed by San Antonio.
Interesting, right? Bad defenses, like pretty much across the board. Denver's maybe
Denver.
top 10-ish, yeah.
And Denver is not even in, they're not in the top 10 of defense this year, right?
Or you wonder though, is that the defense limiting threes or is that the defense being so bad that teams get all the way to the basket, which is what they want to do anyway? Like, you know what I mean? Like it could be that too.
And look, to be fair, so like Minnesota is 7th, Cleveland is 8th, or Milwaukee's 9th, Orlando is 10th. And so it's like, okay, like there is some pretty good defenses there, but it's just funny that of the top 5 teams, or even top 6, just because Portland was so close to being in the top, like they were basically dead even. Of the top 6 teams that are great at limiting opponent 3-point attempts, there's one top 10 defense, and it's Denver's.
Yeah. You know what? The unfortunate part about this is what it reveals is that you can't just look at the number and conclude that the Pelicans are a good or bad defense or are lucky, because all those teams you just mentioned, like you can't, I guess you have to watch what they do. Like what kinds of threes are, it's like, that just makes it harder to study defenses.
And this happened to me earlier in the season where it's of the games I caught. It was like someone had said in our Discord, I apologize, I can't remember, that CJ McCollum was having a fantastic defensive season. And you look at some of the counting numbers of what he's doing with steals, it's like, okay. And then I was just like, like I haven't seen it. But then you go back and you're kind of watching possessions that he's not involved in directly. And it's, okay. It's like they are that was a great way to frame it. It's like, this is the team that you have to watch them to defend to understand why this is happening beyond luck. But I do have to concede, just because we've seen it play out. I'm going to default to history with you. I think the 3-point stuff is probably more lucky than not. But I will say, relative to like what the Knicks did, like during the early Tibbs days, it does feel like more than the typical Jedi defense, the Pelicans are doing things to actually affect what's going on here.
Yes, I think that's Yeah, I don't think it's all luck. I think it's mostly luck. And I think the part that isn't luck is really worth paying attention to, like how aggressively they rotate and how much they just always have a body at the nail. So you can't drive. You have to swing, swing, swing and hope they fuck up a rotation. And then you get your wide open three. But to your point, maybe that's like 8 passes into the possession and the shot clock's at
And
5. And that's a
and
harder shot.
the amount of work it takes to get them in rotation because of the way
Exactly.
they're able to navigate screens.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna have to like snip this up and make it a sneak preview because I think that was one of our better discussions.
Well,
We only talk
it's
about
a
big
great
markets
topic.
on this podcast, though. So let's head over to the next team.
All right. Let's see.
So I think
Yeah.
this is for you.
Okay, cool.
Speaking of huge markets. Oh wait, we did have one quick Pelicans questions here. So I apologize. At Henry DeMarce, my biggest question for the Pelicans: what is their best closing lineup? Zion, Bi, CJ Herb are the core 4. Who should be the 5th? They mentioned Nance, Murphy, Alvarado. Deep in my heart, I want GTA out there, which is I respect them going with their heart.
If you could get away with like Murphy, I think is their 5th best player, or
I
right?
was about to say he's better than their 5th best player, but it's no like Ingram and McCollum and Zion and Herb. Like he is there. He's in their top 5 best players. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Wherever you might want to rank him, maybe you think he's better than
That's what makes it. By the way, that's what makes it so hard to project the future of like who do you get rid? It's no. You could say there's no even if they're imperfect, it's not just trade Brandon Ingram or trade. No, these players are really good.
Yeah. So it would be nice if you could do it with Murphy. I think you're just too small because Zion doesn't really like play big in a lot of ways that you would like him to, and neither does Ingram. So you're just like some wings and CJ. Like that's tough. I look. I prefer Nance over Valanciunas because of the defense, because of the passing. He hurts the offense. You can't post him up. That's a value with Valanciunas, but really like all things being equal, give me the like mobile switchable pass first guy over the plotting post up center that doesn't really defend the rim that well.
I would have to look at the lineup data on this, but I wonder one, it's probably super matchup dependent, but I think just CJ McCollum, I want to make it clear his 3-point volume has been uber important to this team, but because I agree with your overarching thoughts on Nance, it's kind of like if you have Trey Murphy out there, does it make the idea of CJ McCollum a little bit less important to where he's the guy? I know you call him the core 4. Where does he have to be the guy that you yank, or then are you just worried about, Trey Murphy's done some stuff off the dribble of late, especially, but just this year in general. And since he's entered the league, could you get away with where it's Nance and Murphy and Herb Jones and then Zion and Ingram?
I mean, that's a really fun line, especially like CJ's not like a pure point guard by any stretch, really.
No,
so
he's just one of the better, like, by the way, I think the shooting and the shooting volume from the outside is.
Yeah, you need Herb to continue making like 40 some odd % of his threes and shoot more. And you probably also you still got Zion and Nance out there, neither of whom are going to scare defenses from deep, like in any meaningful way. So
By the way,
the other guys have got to shoot a lot of threes and make a lot of threes.
The lineup with Zion at the 5, so it's Zion, Herb, Ingram, Murphy, and McCollum is a minus 41.5 net rating on the season in about 60 possessions. The lineup I had considered is a minus 40 in 10 possessions. And so like the sample is just not, so you have Nance instead of CJ McCollum in that 5. The data there is just, I think you just get into a little bit finicky when it's okay. When Larry Nance Jr. is your 5 there, but Zion's kind of your biggest, but it's a really tough question that I think when we get to the playoffs, they're probably a team that will play either the hot hand or what's working or the matchup more than some of the other upper echelon squads.
I think this question illustrates how unclear that answer is, like as a across the board, like who should close. So
it will be Jonas too. Like he's just absolutely going to be in there. Yeah.
It's got to be matchup specific. Like that's the easy answer. I think just in the playoffs will show that if they, depending on it, if they play more than one playoff team.
So we are on to your Oklahoma City Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I am ascribing the Thunder to you. First question from them, unbiased Pistons fan. Do you buy into the idea that the Thunder have too many picks to make a trade? Each pick is devalued by the fact that they can offer many more picks, so they probably have to really overpay with the other GM seeing their war chest of picks.
Yeah, you hear this talked about sometimes of how like Utah to some extent too, where it's like, yeah, they got all these picks, so all of the asks from other teams are going to be, out just ridiculous. Like, oh, we know you've got 17 firsts in the next 11 drafts. So if you want this guy, the price is, 40% higher for you because you can afford it. Like you hear that out there sometimes.
It's called price gouging, which should be illegal, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's like, I guess in theory that's true. Have we ever seen that or heard of that happening? Is that a thing? Like, or is that just like
the overpays more so feel like an active choice? Minnesota getting Gobert,
yeah,
for example.
But I guess it makes sense in theory because, like, I guess you should, right? You should. You'd be like, yeah, you can spare it. Like, this is what we're not.
That doesn't mean that they're going to give it up, then, though, right?
Right. Like, that's the thing.
Sam
like,
Presti running the show.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess, like, I suppose it's possible that what would you call it? It's not like lowballing. It's like they're being highballed by GMs that are. Is that what that is? Like, it's just like irrational like prices. I don't know. Like, so I guess, like, is it not good to have, are their picks devalued? Is it? I don't think so. Cause, like, if you're trading one to some other team for something, like, it's not like these all have to go in one transaction. Like, your first that you're trading is going to be worth the same as another team's first. Like, if anything, their picks are devalued because they're really good. Like, the Thunder's own picks kind of suck now for the next decade.
I would say you only run into an issue if you're trying to shoehorn all these same draft picks, where if most of these picks were just, oh, they have 5 2025 picks and nothing in 26 or 27. That's not the case with the Thunders. Yeah, they may have 8 draft picks in one draft, but they always have more in the next year. And we've seen Sam Presti's also kind of diversified their portfolio by, you're talking about how devalued their own picks are. Now they have 2 of these, they gave up picks to have swap rights. There was the one with the Mavericks, and what was the other one they have with the other team that they could swap with? I already forgot about it. So, but the Heat, right? Is that I can't remember which team it is, but they have that. So like you have those two just like what could be high caliber swaps out there. But in addition, these picks are still spread out that I don't think it's, you can ask for more. And maybe if the Thunder want to outbid, they have the ability to say yes and do it, but that doesn't mean that they have to. And so I don't think it devalues them. Like it creates more of an urgency, like, because you have to do this bookkeeping of picks. And yet we've seen Sam Presti do it as they've run out of roster room to house all these picks. He's either kicked the can down the road, made consolidations. So I just don't buy into this that much.
No, it's a little bit, I don't know how many picks you'd have to have before I viewed it as any kind of a detriment, but the Thunder don't have that amount. Like, it's still a very good thing.
At Seth Justice, will OKC shorten their rotations as drastically as most teams do in the playoffs? Will this make them worse? Will they only play 8? Going to be odd seeing Mark Daigneault play less than 10 players. Our best guys don't play a ton of minutes now. Is that an advantage or disadvantage in the playoffs?
I mean, I think the safest answer is that the rotation will shrink just because it always does. I don't know if it'll happen right away. Like, depending on who they see in the first round, it might not be a situation where the Thunder feel like they got to start trimming fat or just, like, upping their, best 5-6 guys minutes to levels way beyond what they played. But, like, generally speaking, that is going to happen. I suppose, like, you might look at, like, Gilgeous-Alexander is going to play a ton. Williams is going to play a ton. Chet's going to play a ton. Dort's going to be out there. Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe. Giddey is someone that, like, absolutely, that guy has, like, real playoff issues. So you might see his minutes get trimmed a little bit. And then after that, it's like, I don't know, are you that concerned that Aaron Wiggins is playing less or Kenrich Williams is playing less? I think they will, other than Giddey, I don't think anybody's going to see, like, this drastic role change or diminishment, at least until maybe the second round. And then that's, maybe beyond that, depending on how far the Thunder get, you might really see it get cut down because that's the other thing. Opponents are going to tell you who can and can't play. Like, you're going to find out really quickly, like, who's got the deficiency that is going to be exploitable. And that's who it's going to have to be. Other than Giddey, I don't know if there's anybody that's, like, got this, blinking red light of, like, playoff issue. Like, that's what I'd say about that. I think really Giddey's the only guy in danger there.
And I think the Thunder, where it gets murky is, yes, they'll shorten their rotation, but if we were looking to pin it down, I think that they can and will and we've seen them just do this in general, cater to matchups more or what's working to the point that, okay, we know you mentioned Shea, Chet, J Dub, those, and I would say Lou Dort. I know like he might not be in every closing unit, but those are the four guys that we know are going to log heavy minutes. And then I think you could see a lot of fluctuation with Kenrich Williams, Gordon Hayward, Josh Giddey specifically, Isaiah Joe. You could see, I'd probably say Isaiah Joe's like a guy that I would play a ton of minutes there anyway. But like a Casey Wallace and Aaron Wiggins, those are guys who will see their minutes just fluctuate more based on the matchups or what's working. And so maybe the Thunder have more. Yes, they'll shorten their rotation, but maybe they have fewer. Oh, these 3 or 4 guys are going to play heavy minutes, where other teams, it feels like there's, we just went through this with Denver on the previous pod where it's, no, we know what 6, 7, 8 guys are going to play the most. And with the Thunder, it's, well, we kind of know what 4 guys are going to play the most, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have my own question about the Thunder.
Oh, let's have it.
And this is in light of Scotty Barnes getting injured, might not hit the games minimum. Şengün gets injured, but he is eligible, by the way. Zach Lowe points out, for most improved, or should be, because you can play in 62 games. And if those 62 games come before you're deemed to have a season-ending injury, and so you played in 85% of your team games or whatever it was within those 62 games, which he has, you're still eligible. But
isn't there something about like the season-ending injury designation means you're not expected to be back until like May 31st or some totally arbitrary, like weird.
And I don't know, like, how do they investigate that? Because if I'm the Rockets and just like, that you're not going to be a play-in team this season, I am just going to prioritize the long-term and shut Şengün down for the rest of the year.
Get a doctor to say he can't come back till June 1st. Therefore, he's out for, it's a season ender, so he can be considered for that award. I don't know. The rule's stupid. This is a stupid rule.
I would agree. I wasn't too against it at first, and now I'm just like, I've completely kind of flip-flopped on it. But
we don't need it.
I don't think you need to use those. Oh, well, look, Şengün might not be eligible or is barely eligible, and Scotty Barnes might not be eligible. I'm breaking from what would be my second-year players can't win this award consideration. Do the Oklahoma City Thunder have the NBA's, if you're throwing criteria out the window, do the Oklahoma City Thunder, or my criteria of second-year players, do the Oklahoma City Thunder have the NBA's most improved player?
So it kind of comes down to, I guess there's a two-pronged thing we got to look at. The first is, when we did our most improved, I think we sort of, I don't know if I just like steamrolled it, but I kind of like the idea, and this went to Barnes, who was our pick until he got hurt, and Kobe White, who I think you cornered me and I made him my new winner. I like the idea of guys that like where improved means like something's different, not just more minutes, not just more points, not just like more volume of like the same kind of thing, not more quantity, but like qualitatively they're different. So if we're married to that, then we have to ask, is Jalen Williams doing just more, or is he doing like different and better stuff? So, I mean, I guess I'll start. I think like certainly you could point to the 3-point shooting, just under 45% after just under 36% last year. The volume's not like massively up. He's taking fewer than 1 more 3 per game, but the hit rate is like, that's a big time skill jump. All of his other numbers are, his facilitation is up. He's actually rebounding worse. Points are up. We don't really, just going with points per game increase is kind of not the most thoroughly analytical way to analyze improvement. So I guess like, I think you could look at his role and the things that he's being asked to do this year on both ends. Like he's got to guard like tough matchups, a lot of 4s, which wasn't necessarily happening last year. So I think if you can get past, if you believe there's enough qualitative improvement, which not to the degree of Barnes, probably not to the degree of Kobe White, then if you cross that threshold, is he quantitatively better? Like, yeah, the numbers are just like, he's just doing more. So I'm here for it. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to say a bad word about Jalen Williams. I think he's going to make a ton of all-star games, and he's awesome. He scores more points in the fourth quarter than anyone on his team, and his team has SGA. So that's a thing. I don't know if I would give it to him, but I guess like there's not a good argument against him because like he's just better than Kobe White, like, right, objectively. And like I guess probably he was last year too. I don't know. I don't know what I think. I think it's at least it's a discussion worth having. I don't know if I'm ready to just be like, oh yeah, it's J-Dub, which is off brand for me. But I'm curious what you think because I know you wanted to talk about this.
He is he's been so good, and I think he's improved so much to the point that I'm conflicted about I haven't thought this hard about a second year player winning the award since De'Aaron Fox's sophomore campaign. And so the things you mentioned, is he functionally different? I think he's shouldering a lot more defensive responsibility than he did last year. And I think that's helped Shai Gilgeous-Alexander make some preliminary all defense teams. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been great defensively, but the way that he is insulated with Lou Dort and J-Dub specifically, and Chet now, of course, too, having that guy behind him. Offensively, not all of just like the per minute or percentage counting stats are up, but this is someone who, I mean, the types of shots he's able to hit now. And I mentioned how I would still like them to have a player who has more jiggle and joggle on the ball. And there is more of an abruptness, a suddenness to what Jalen Williams does. The counters he has developed this season, specifically looking in 75 games last year, he made 5 fadeaway jumpers. He has played in 58 games so far this season. He has made 29 fadeaway jumpers, and he's shooting 50% on them. The step back 3 is in his arsenal. Like it's, you just mentioned you mentioned what he's shooting on threes overall. The step back 3 last year, he shot 50% on step back threes, but he hit 6 of them. He was 6 of 12. This year, that's 75 games. This year, through 58 games, he's hit 19 step back threes already. He's shooting 46.3% on them. You look at the pull-up jumper, and this is still, and I know you've seen this, but this is mind-blowing because now I'm throwing out, this is an entire season. 93 players have taken at least 150 pull-up jumpers. 150 could be arbitrary, but I thought it was 100 felt too low. If you want to use 100, it's only going to change his position by 1. But of 93 players who've taken at least 150 pull-up jumpers, he ranks second in effective field goal percentage, behind only CJ McCollum. This is somewhat, and the other thing here is this year, he has logged 750 plus possessions without Josh Giddey or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor. The Thunder have won those minutes, and not handedly, but comfortably. This isn't plus 0.05 points per 100. It's plus 2.2 points per 100. Founded around an elite defense. So the offense hasn't been great. But like J-Dub, when you're looking at the lineup context, is the driving force of, there's Chet Holmgren in there, but they don't have these A-plus passers to have alongside. Like it was Micic before he was traded. It's Case and Wallace now and beforehand. So like he is running the whole show in those units. This is, and he's not going to make one, but this is like a leap from, if you're not going to have him in consideration, I think it speaks more towards how high you were on him as a rookie, which is perfectly fine. But what I'm going to say is we're talking about someone who was a very good rookie to be in top, this was a rookie of the year contender, let's call it, who is now making a jump that I don't even think Paolo Banchero has made. Paolo Banchero made the jump to all-star, but that's about the state of the East. J-Dub has legitimately played for much of this season. Like if he was in the Eastern Conference, he would make an all-NBA team. And that's the best way that I could frame this for me.
Couple things. I think your points about his mid-range game, that was not nearly as effective last year or prolific as it is this year. And so like part of what was tricky about him is like, as a rookie, he kind of did a lot of stuff really well. So it's like, where is there to improve? That's one. The like self-creation, you cited it. He's last year, 9 out of 10 threes for him were assisted, 90%. This year it's 73.9. So he's added self-created threes. He's added get your own bucket stuff. He's added primary facilitator duties. He's added, I'm guarding 4s now, and anything smaller than that, also no problem. So those are all new skills. So I guess to circle all the way back, like, is he qualitatively different? I think, yeah, I think probably so. I also think he's a better player than Paolo Banchero right now today. Like it was a little bit of a bit when I made him a rookie of the year over Paolo last year. It's like, I don't think Paolo's better than him. I think Jalen Williams is a better player than Paolo today now. And I think going forward, based on the trajectory he's on, there's no reason to believe that's going to flip.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is I would just love,
but he's so good.
I would love to just see if you flip-flopped their teams completely
Sure.
what they then look like, because I just need, and what I'm saying is and shout out to Jamal Mosley for getting his extension. I think he deserves it, because when you watch Orlando's offense, the spacing actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
They just don't have the personnel to do anything with it.
Right.
And so if you put Paolo on this team, I think, and J-Dub on the Magic, so I'm not ready to go there, but if you said you'd rather have J-Dub long-term because he gives you more positional versatility on defense, and then you don't think the offensive difference is like extant or even like exists at all,
Yeah.
then yeah, I think I want to give the flowers to Paolo, who I think is just spectacular. But
right, he's a really good player, and like is going to be. He's made an all-star team. Jalen Williams hasn't. You said it. It's got a lot to do with the conferences, but like I think one of the best argument against me last year picking Jalen was the situation, and it's like, okay, so because Jalen Williams he's a secondary player, he's a dependent scorer, like he can't run his own show. Paolo has to do all that stuff. Like I think Jalen's proving this year he can do that, and we have not seen is Paolo flip it and be, and because the knock on him is he's a score first guy that doesn't score efficiently. Like that's still the case. So it's like Paolo has not addressed the knock on him. Williams kind of has. Like this isn't about Paolo versus Jalen. This is a most improved question. But I think they're somewhat related, because like if the knocks, insofar as there were any on Jalen, like he's addressed them. Like he's just like, what does he do poorly now? Like what are the weaknesses in his game? Like you're pretty hard pressed to come up with like any.
I think if you're looking for like the methodical, if you want someone to run your pick and rolls or like set up the half court as the facilitator there, but it's just the counters he's added from the in between is the best way to. I cited the turnaround. You're talking about like the mid range, the same dip, but. And by the way, I misspoke before. I said if he was in the East, he would have made an All NBA team for me. I meant All-Star.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
I gotcha. We got the Suns next here. I think this is from Matt Krell. Should James Jones be fired? Tampering for Drew Eubanks?
I don't think after getting the Royce O'Neal trade done, I don't think you could fire him. And I would also say, if this is a serious question, I can't tell if they were just coping. Like I very much question how much agency he had in the Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal trades.
I don't. I don't. I think we know how much agency he had. I think a billionaire said, "Do it, make it happen," and he did it. Like anyone who wants to keep their job, he did what the boss told him to. I don't know.
I'm with you there. So no, I don't think he should be fired. But you're getting to a point where you just changed the coach, like so. It's like if things go poorly this season, there's really not much else you can change.
Yeah. All right. That was too quick and easy for you. From Spiefy, will the Suns ever have good vibes again?
They started, since this question was asked, they had some good vibes. The Devin Booker injury looks like it might be in the rear view. I'm going to use this to go off on just a very quick tangent because everyone knows about their fourth quarter issues. Mm-hmm. Can we find a way for them to consistently simplify Kevin Durant's role on the offensive end? It's just, as someone he's a fine passer, but as someone who's just not going to get to the rim anymore, like you don't need to have, and I know you don't necessarily love having him stand in the like corners or whatever. The ball doesn't need to be in his hands because it makes it easier for teams to just really put pressure on him. Use him then as the screener if you want to keep him involved more. It's just too much of their, I sometimes it's by necessity, they're missing players, but I don't think Kevin Durant needs to be like super ISO heavy in crunch time unless you're using Bradley Beal and Devin Booker more so when they're healthy to create advantages for him, to get him the ball so that he's not going up against double and triple teams, because we've seen just like he's Kevin Durant, but he's going to make an all NBA team. I'm not saying Kevin Durant is bad. I just feel like and part of this has to be with the lack of availability, especially like Bradley Beal and Devin Booker haven't played a ton together, but like we've seen it, the Kevin Durant lone star minutes have not generally gone as well this year. He's just not that type of player anymore. But like part of it is also like you have the personnel to make sure that doesn't happen. And I've seen it happen, at least in some games that I've watched, too often when there is another star on the court where it's, well, why are we letting it get so easy to put pressure and to throw traps at Kevin Durant where he's not, like when you're looking at passes for the sake of passes and like he's not throwing the best ones there. But that's a symptom of the whole team. I think who said this? I think it was Bradley Beal who came out and said, like, we need to let it fly rather than just passing for the sake of passing. And so that's not a Kevin Durant issue. I know everyone gets caught up. They need a real floor general, and that's the turnover issues, or that's the fourth quarter issues. No, it's play smarter basketball. I'm sorry, they have the. I feel like that was very on a scale of they want it more to defense is all about effort. I think I'm probably closer to defense is all about effort, right? On that one.
Yeah.
But like just play smarter because you have the personnel to not hesitate to take 3-pointers. Like, or you have the personnel to be like, well, let's find a way to get Kevin Durant the ball rather than giving it to him from the jump and asking him to create something entirely out of nothing when it's going to make defenses easier to go out and attack him. That was my tangent.
Because it never happens. I love it when you just let yourself seep into like a little bit of old school coach speak every once in a while. Because I feel like I do it.
I feel dirty, but I also feel like, am I wrong? How wrong?
That's exactly how I feel when I do it. It's like, this is lazy, but I feel like it's right. So I'm going to say it. Yeah, no.
Look, I'm not coaching them. I don't get paid the big bucks to figure out how to best do that while you're dealing with all these injuries. But I've seen enough of Kevin Durant plus either Devin Booker or Bradley Beal, and even both of them in the fourth quarter to know maybe we're doing this wrong.
I'm just here for it. I'm just here for you gradually reducing your analysis to like, both teams played hard.
This is how we get the podcast views. As I just said,
you need to yell
smarter. Damn it!
In cliches. We don't do nearly enough of that. I think we should. That's our problem. Okay, that was a quick one. I want to give you this Portland one, just because. This is from Nelson Tift. Is Scoot / Shaedon Sharpe the backcourt of the future for the Blazers? Will that duo be good enough to build around? Still a ways to go before we know. To understate the case quite severely.
Yeah, we're not going to get any more information on this season. The friggin' Shaedon Sharpe injury is devastating for them. I would frame it this way: is what are the keys to this actually working out? And so I would say they need one or both to be an effective driver and off the dribble jump shooter, and then at least one of them then needs to emerge as an effective point of attack defender. I think the answer to like Scoot just might be that guy in both categories.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think if I had to pick, the other thing is just like, how does Anthony Simons' future there kick into this? What are the other wings you have on the roster? Collectively though, I do think they have the tools to complement one another. I do not though think that Sharpe has the tools to guard up. And I don't think Scoot, like neither of these two, I think should be defending beyond the guard position is where I'm at. We've seen more of that from Sharpe than Scoot, obviously. And that might be where you run into some oddity. But again, we just haven't seen enough of it this year.
Yeah, it's a total mystery box. Like, I mean, you've got just the bare outlines of like Sharpe is an absurdly athletic two that looks like he's going to be able to get his own shot, make threes, get to the basket, all that stuff. Scoot is the quintessential point guard. Like, okay, cool. I do think you're dead right though, that these both look like one position defenders. And like, that's kind of, there aren't a lot of backcourts on good teams where both the one and the two are strictly capable of guarding the one or the two. Like, so like, but look, where it's like, that issue along with where does Anthony Simons fit? Like, fortunately, the Blazers are not nearly good enough for those to be like top of the list concerns at this point. It's just, if they'd both played a full season, I don't know that we could necessarily answer that question still. And it didn't come close to doing that. So it's like super early days, but just, the talent, the raw talent is like undoubtedly there. It's just, we've got to figure out fit. We've got to figure out support pieces. We got to figure out literally everything else other than like their athletic ability and like scouting reports, because we just haven't seen it.
And the other thing that I didn't mention too is just like, I do think, because when you're talking about guys who might in theory be best at generating their own looks, I don't know, because Sharpe looks like he can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like he has done it. He's hit some really ridiculously difficult shots.
Yeah.
He just, the way he can move off the ball or what he can do because of his athleticism above the rim and just looking at his mechanics, it feels like he'll end up being a very efficient catch and shoot guy. Mm-hmm. I don't worry about offensive redundancy with them.
No, I don't either. I think, yeah, actually that's like the one thing I feel pretty confident. Like we don't need that. Like we've checked that box. Like they're not going to like, what's the word? They're not going to like cannibalize each other's effectiveness because they want to be in the same places or do the same things. I don't think that's an issue.
That was a quick. We only had one question on the Blazers. We also only have one question on the Sacramento Kings from at XXL extra large popcorn. Is waiting for the perfect trade going to doom the primes of De'Aaron Fox, Domas Sabonis, and Malik Monk? I just love that Malik Monk is included in
I mean, that guy has been on one lately. He's like,
I was gonna say, do you know what my favorite Malik Monk stat might be? But I probably should double check. No, this is great. Malik Monk leads the league in assists on drives.
amazing.
Do you know who's in second? Shea.
Luka.
So Shea is in second with 140. Malik Monk is in first with 142. Shea has finished 1,536 drives versus Malik Monk's 831. So his assists are coming on like half the number of drives. That's not an indictment of Shea. That's just
No,
holy fuck Malik Monk. That was my point.
free agent to be, by the way.
They have his early bird rights. I think they'll be able to keep him. I just don't see the team that's going to come in and be like, here's $20 million a year.
I think, well, a team could credibly look at him and say he's being underutilized. He's not even starting. He's finishing a ton of games. Like, he's way up on the list of fourth quarter minutes and scoring in like league wide, even though he doesn't start for them. That's why he's my runaway sixth man of the year, by the way. But I can imagine
would like a word.
I can imagine a team looking at him and saying, I mean, how bad is it if he's like our starting point guard or our starting two? Because like his facilitation is like spiked.
You want that Monk and Maxey backcourt?
Ooh.
Sounds like.
Well, then you have some defensive issues. But Monk, to his credit, has played really hard defensively. That's not the question.
Yeah, we're just like.
Well, you got me going on Malik Monk, and I've been watching a lot of him lately, and I have nothing but good things to say. I don't think so, because I mean, at least in Fox and Sabonis's case, like they're young enough where like the window's open. Sabonis just got extended. Fox, they're going to have team control. Like they're always going to be able to make the best offer for him. He seems to love it in Sacramento. So it's not, I don't hear the clock ticking, but I mean, I do think the need they have has been apparent for such a long time, like the OG Anunoby void, that they got to address that at some point, because if even this year, you know, it's fairly clear that like they just don't have the lockdown big wing defender that's going to make threes. Like they want that guy to be Keegan Murray. I'm telling you, Keegan Murray is invisible for as many games as he looks awesome. Like that's just a thing with him. Mm-hmm. He could improve. Maybe he's going to be that guy.
Whoa, you're saying a player
to which
he already played a year and a half. Are you sure?
Well, he's an old rookie, Dan. So he's not going to get any better. So like, yeah, he could be. He certainly is like, I could see him being a starter on a good team for a long time. He's already one of those. So what's the problem with having two guys like that? I think for the Kings, they need another guy. They need another Murray type, someone really that's either better offensively or better defensively, ideally both. So obviously those guys are impossible to get. They can still do that. I think the Harrison Barnes spot is one that they'll trade him. They'll whatever. I don't think the door's shut. It is like, it will be concerning if they go into next season and don't like really make it a point to address that spot on the roster, because everybody on the planet knows like that's where the hole is.
I've come around on this to where I don't think they've doomed it. If anything, I think they were probably smarter than not with what they did this year, because there are a few things here. Let's look at what did they actually pass on. And so did they not outbid the Pacers for Pascal Siakam? Do you know what? Good.
Yeah.
Because that would not have worked out. I don't like I hated the Sabonis Siakam fit. Now the Anunoby thing, they were not heavily linked to him. I think Anunoby would have been the perfect fit for this team.
That's why I mentioned him, not because they had a shot, but because like that is the guy.
Well, realistically, because it seems like the Raptors wanted players over picks. And so if you want to give up Keegan Murray for OG Anunoby, I'm okay with that, because did OG Anunoby want to be in Sacramento? It seems like he wanted to be in New York. And so by not involving yourself in the OG Anunoby sweepstakes to the degree that you actually got him, I understand it. And so what is the other move they passed on? Did you want them to, Alex Caruso would have been good. It seems like the Bulls wouldn't have traded him for 3 first-round picks for some reason. And so if you want to critique something, it's why weren't you the team that gave up seconds to get Royce O'Neal?
Sure.
Why was it the Suns that were able to get him? And I think that's fair. But when you're talking about going after that big trade, I don't see a move that was feasible that they actually passed on. And even if they could have gotten OG Anunoby, I'm just going to assume that, I'm just going to assume they couldn't have gotten him because they didn't want to give up Keegan Murray because they weren't sure that he was going to stay. And that just makes a ton of sense. And the Raptors wanted players. And so after that, it's who did they pass on? It doesn't seem like Jeremy Grant was available, and you're not giving up Keegan Murray for Jeremy Grant. And so I'm okay with that. The other thing is because you owe your pick to Atlanta this year, is you are a little bit encumbered in the immediate of what you can offer. Now, once that pick conveys, you can start trading 2025. Like once this draft is like here. And so that opens up your optionality. And you've also now waited out, okay, we've gone through another season. We know what we need, but more to the point, maybe more trade targets that make sense who are under contracts for longer that aren't about to become free agents. Those become available. That's when we take our swing. And I think the clock really starts ticking, or the critiques really need to get more aggressive if they don't, as you mentioned, do anything substantial over the offseason. And you can also, I know Zach Lowe has mentioned this. I'm not as big a fan of it, where it's like, look at how good the West is this year. And so you've decided you're kind of in the middle of the pack. You don't want to go all in. That is not the reason not to make the trade, because you know what's going to be really tough to navigate next year? The Western Conference.
And
that's
forever,
not easier.
Forever. Like, it's just not going to. When's the West ever been in a down year? Like,
and that's, I'm not even criticizing Zach. By the way, very quick aside on this. There's been like this trend of calling Zach Lowe a casual now, and it's making me angry because if Zach Lowe is a casual, I need to be fired immediately. Like, imagine thinking that's the take. It's probably because you're a fan of the team and he didn't watch a random back-to-back on a Tuesday night in January. It just makes me, when people who, if someone called Caitlin Cooper and Akaya Duncan like a casual fan, I'm sure they have, you're fucking idiotic to say that. So I'm sorry. I saw that going around recently. But like, I'm more about they have to wait out for the right opportunity. And the urgency is there, and it's going to continue to grow. But so far, I don't think, like, the whole cap space stuff was, when they made the moves, if you want to criticize that, when they made the moves over the offseason to clear cap space, and then, oh, that's what they did with it. Yeah, fair. If you wanted them to make some more middling swings, fine. But they haven't missed out on the move that was available yet, that both made sense and was feasible.
Right. That's right. They don't have the Celtics Danny Ainge of like, well, we were in on this guy, but it's like, the guy hasn't been there. So I think that's right.
It's your turn to take me through the next team.
All righty. San Antonio Spurs, this from Unbiased Pistons fan. They're going to offer a lot to get Trae, right? Like, that seems like too obvious of a fit not to happen. Trae Young, San Antonio Spurs. It does feel pretty obvious. there are a lot
of people who are. So I understand the argument against it, which is, do you want to diminish Wemby's creativity on offense? Because he's done some fucking wild shit this year on offense. But like, Trae Young is, I know there's issues in Atlanta, but Trae Young has played off the ball and taken a larger share of his shot attempts as catch and shoots. I'm not saying he's ever going to be Cason Wallace or Patrick Beverley when it comes to playing off the ball. But so it can work. I understand if you're reticent to do it, but there was some stuff going around. I saw on Twitter the other day where it's like, no, Trae Young's a chucker. Well, Trae Young's one of the best passers in the NBA right now. That's why you make that trade.
Yeah, I think. Look, I get it. Like, I can imagine the fears of, well, Trae Young is here now, and this is going to reduce Wembanyama. The idea of like putting any kind of a box around Wembanyama is like not a great one. Like, I think at this stage, it's still very much like, let's explore the space. You want to try to play this position? Let's do that. Let's see how it looks for a month or whatever. Like, don't put any constraints on him. I think if you have Trae Young there, like, and you want to, and the idea is that like Trae Young still gets to be Trae Young, I think Wembanyama gets marginalized, or at least like gets some of the variety trimmed out of his game, which is like, but that maybe comes with him catching like 12 lobs a game. Like, it just getting, just the easiest spoon-fed dunks he's ever going to get.
Imagine him having more energy to expend on the defensive end.
Right. So like, I think it's at some point, I don't know, I'm almost hesitate to say this, but you're going to have Wembanyama will settle into like, okay, he does these things well. This is his role, right? His role may be he's the best player on the team on both ends, and he does, LeBron. What is LeBron's role? What is prime LeBron's role? Like maybe that's it. But like there are still sort of like, I don't know, not rules, but like you're asking him to do certain things. Whereas right now it's like Wembanyama gets to try everything. And I hesitate to suggest putting a player next to him that means like everything isn't on the table anymore, which I think would have to happen with Young there, at least if they're sharing the floor, which ideally they would, like all the time.
No,
But like
stagger them.
you might get some wild Wemby no Trey minutes, I guess, where Wemby just gets to do whatever he wants. But like you also kind of want to start winning a little bit because Wembanyama's really good already, and you'd very much like to start building a habit, I guess, of playing meaningful games. And Trae Young would very much help you do that. He addresses their exact need, which is they do not have anyone that can score and facilitate at the point. So like, if that's for
Trey
like
Jones slander.
oh, I want to like Trey Jones. I want.
Why do you hate him?
He's not good enough. Sorry, like he's not a starter. Like he's just not a starter in the NBA right now.
So I don't know if this would have to be is he at this point in his career, but the degree to which James Harden has adjusted with the Clippers makes me believe that we could see even more wholesale change in Trae Young if he's put next to the right player/players. I don't know. Is he too young for that, where he might view himself as better than Wembanyama, where it's James Harden's coming into a more established pecking order that has 2 stars and like an ecosystem that was kind of working or they were a contender without him? I don't know, but like Wemby actually seems like someone people would actually want to play with because he is comfortable in the play finishing role. And so there would need to be some type of give and take there. Everything will come down to cost. But when I first heard the trade of the Spurs stuff, I will admit, I never thought Trae, he's a chucker, they can't go after him.
No.
I skewed more towards, I don't want to infringe upon Wemby's development. Now I'm kind of like, there's no reason why Trae Young can't augment it and that they can't find a middle ground, a happy medium.
Yeah, I think like the Harden thing is he sort of had to change, like, and he resisted it for a while. And like all greats do. Like, Kobe Bryant never changed. Like, and he had that awful last year. Russ resisted change for like through multiple trades. I think it's hard to find the really great player, and Trae
won't defer enough to pods. Like we've seen
it. It's ridiculous. But I think I can imagine Trae thinking like, I play a certain way, I'm gonna keep doing this. And this big guy seems like he's good, but I'm Trae Young and I play this way. Maybe that happens. I still think like you owe it. This is ridiculous, but like you owe it to Wembanyama to put guys around him that can help him win. Like you can't. We talk about windows all the time. It's like Wembanyama's really good right now. He's going to be flat out great next year and for the foreseeable future. So like, he's just got to have NBA players around him. Like that's like good ones. That'd be ideal.
All things considered, what you would expect the cost to be and the fit. What would you rather see the Spurs do? Trade for DeJounte Murray or Trae Young?
I think Trae. I mean, like
I'm with you.
I just, get the guy out there that's going to throw him a million lobs and make threes and just handle the playmaking. I think I'm good with that.
My other question: what if it's not Trae, and it's fine if people or if you don't believe it, and I'm not saying he is the perfect fit, but like, what is if you went after a trade? I don't even care. I'm not even saying they have to be available. Then what is the player that you want around Wemby? And it's really getting into like, well, Devin Booker would make a lot of sense. Like, yeah, that's fucking awesome. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
Like that's
you say like go get Tyus Jones. Like, but aren't you just beyond like underwhelmed by that? Like that's the guy. Like that
might help you get to the play-in or the top 6 or whatever, but it's not gonna. You have to take a bigger swing because Wemby is just Wemby's gonna be one of the best players in the NBA of all time.
Yeah,
like he's just like
sorry,
that's
where we are.
Is that it on the Spurs? Do we only have one question on them? No, we had another one from Glad.
Okay. All right. This is from Glad. As amazing a season as Wemby is having, I'm pretty sure David Robinson has mentioned in every stat that Wemby's accomplished. So in a bigger grand scheme picture of the league and league history, where does David Robinson stack up all time? I know he's top 75, but I know he's not top 10. I feel like he's probably top 30-ish. But I think you could make the case for somewhere between 20 to 25. I feel like we're underrating how good the Admiral was.
I know you would agree because you love the Admiral, as do I. He's also one of like the greats where you think, oh, if he was in today's game, my God.
Yeah.
I think what hurts him is his peak was shorter because he started his career later, and that's going to hurt him a bit. But then he averaged during his first 7 season, Grant, 26 points, 12 boards, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, and 3.5 blocks. About that's fucking. And during that time, that's fucking wild. He also won, and I just don't think people understand his accolades. During that stretch, he won a scoring title, an MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, had 5 top 3 finishes overall on the MVP ballot. And like that's just I'll stop there. I I don't know how to reconcile his peak, like the length of it, but if we're just looking at the actual player, he has a top 15 to 20 case.
I think that's right. I think I just looked this up because in the pandemic, when we had no basketball, one of the things I did was ranking the greatest defensive players of all time, and David Robinson was 5th for me of defensive players of all time.
Where was Tim Duncan?
That's a great question. Let me scroll down. Kevin Garnett 4, Hakeem 3, Tim Duncan 2.
How many defensive players of the year though did Tim Duncan win?
Again? Yeah, right. Believe me, that's in there. Bill Russell won, just if you're curious. But yeah, no, David Robinson was flat out one of the greatest defensive players of all time. I think he still has the highest defensive box plus minus of any player with at least 700 games. 1 DPOY in 91, 92. You said he's got the scoring titles. Has a dozen seasons with at least 1 block and 1 steal per game. That's the 3rd most of all time. He's just like, and then like just flat out shortest of short list greatest defenders ever. Like seeing the open floor. Now I'm remembering what I wrote now because I was like passionate about it at the time. Like open floor, David Robinson sprinting is like, it's like art. Like he's just like, he's 7'1" and he's like just jacked out of his mind and he's faster than every other player on the floor and he's just gliding. Like the young David Robinson could move like guys, like just nobody. I'm trying to think of anyone today that like comes close to that. It's hard to like, not even like Giannis. Like Giannis is like these long loping strides. Robinson was like somehow compact despite being enormous, just like an unbelievable athlete that, oh, by the way, could, would win scoring titles. And like, he's just like, it was like a secondary thing. He's unbelievable. So where is he all time? Probably not top 10, but I mean, yeah, 15 to 20. I think
it depends on how you measure like the longevity too.
Right.
I could see that, but Glad asked this question. Top 25 feels like, is that the floor for him? I don't have this stat, but
it's really hard.
30 that feels right. Where if you went lower than 30, like I don't even know where he ranked on because I never really read the top 75 stuff. I think all-time rankings, by the way, are largely just useless because comparing across era, I'm fine with rankings across the same era. I totally get that, but
yeah,
across era is just so difficult.
I was just gonna say, like, I think maybe the better question is like, how good was he at his peak? And I think the answer is he was like a top 3 or 4 player in the league for.
I'll tell you right now before this question, I'm sure I knew it at one point. I'd forgotten that he had a scoring title.
I think he did, right? Because, well, it's like...
No, he did. He had a scoring title. I just totally, when I saw it, I was like, no. But yes, he had a scoring title.
I think it hurts him a little bit that he overlapped so much with Hakeem Olajuwon in his prime, and like Olajuwon just ate him alive, like in its playoff series, and like that's the thing people remember. But like Olajuwon cooked everybody, like because he's Olajuwon was a better defender, and talk about like, is he top 10? I don't know. Like Olajuwon's closer than Robinson is, but like, sorry, that's not a slight. Robinson was like an all-time great player. All right, that was fun. So, we never get historical questions. That was cool.
So final one. This one's, I'll read it to you. We have a bunch on the Jazz. I'm going to loop a couple of them together as I see fit because I'm a dictator, but also because they are a lot of these are semi-related. So, yeah, I mean, we have so there's so many that I could loop together. So let's start with Darkwing Duck. Simple Jazz question, I suppose. Will Lauri Markkanen be on the Jazz's next playoff team? This is kind of, I think we could do this separately. It's just a fair question because it's not asking about like necessarily their direction. No, you know what? We need to loop these all together because it's all like overarching issues. So at Gets It, when and how are the Jazz going to find a number 1 star for their roster? The other one we have from Jeremy T _Allen. What are the Jazz doing as an organization? Are we trying to convey the pick this year or not? And so he's referring to the Thunder's the Thunder get their pick. It's top 10 protected. And so I think all these are kind of just in the same vein. And I think so let's start with the pick one, because I think that kind of informs the rest of the stuff that's happening. It does seem like, based off what they did at the trade deadline, they're trying to keep that pick. Based off what they're doing now, it seems like they're trying to keep that pick.
Based on the rookies they're playing, yeah.
Now, the question becomes, is that the smart call? Because it lowers to top 8 protection next year. My whole thing is, there's like one of two things to consider here. Is if you want to keep the pick this year, it's because you either, one, believe that you're going to be so good next year that rather than send the 12th pick this season, you're going to send the 18th pick next year.
Mhm.
Or you just believe that, hey, we are trading Larry Markkinen before we make the playoffs, and we're going to be so bad that the looser protection doesn't end up holding up, so we don't have to worry about this. And I don't know what school of thought they would, because they're very flexible. They could go a multitude of different directions here. I don't necessarily know what the vision is beyond this season, but to me, it's very clear that they are trying to keep that Oklahoma City pick this season.
Yeah, I don't know how you look at you said it, their trades, and then like the guys that are playing major minutes now, it seems like they want to hold on to that one. I guess tying it into their sort of larger, like sort of where are they going? When are they going to be good? How are they going to be good? Questions like I think, I mean, this is true of most situations like this where we're forecasting, but like, I think we're going to need to know a little bit more about how good Keontae George is, how good Taylor Hendricks is, because those are guys that, we're going to see him a ton down the stretch, and presumably they're both going to play. I mean, George, I think, is probably going to start next year, like full time. He's going to play every game. Hendricks, I don't know. But those guys are so important because, like, if they're not good enough, then, like, yeah, that pick might be high again. And if they are good enough, I think that changes a lot of the plans. And we didn't even talk about Markkinen yet.
And I just wanted to correct myself. So it's top 10 protected this season and next season, then top 8 in 2026. Yeah. And so if you're
same logic though.
But yeah, so it'd just be like, you might think that you're going to be too good or a lot better or just bad enough to keep it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I'm sort of punting just because I'm not prepared to make a judgment on how good their 2 first round draft picks are yet. But
I will say something that I think is is counterintuitive to how I felt kind of leading into this season, and this will answer all their questions at once. Larry Markkinen is not going to be on the next playoff team for the Jazz. And I think that if they're going to get their next star, they're probably hoping they already draft next number 1 star. They're probably hoping they're already drafted him, or they're going to wind up playing the draft game. And had you asked me this over the preseason, I would have said Larry Markkinen will be on the next Jazz playoff team and that they're going to trade for their next number 1 star. But the way that they have handled these past 2 seasons, and look, I'll admit that I could be wrong. The flashbulb moment here, I think, will come in the offseason where they can renegotiate and extend Larry Markkinen's deal. And even if you say, okay, well, if we increase his pay for next season, does he give us a haircut off latter years? You're still probably in a situation where you need to be, well, do we want to pay Larry Markkinen $30+ million a year? I don't, just based off how Danny Ainge has viewed things in the past and maybe wants to gradually play this. I don't think they're going to go. Do I think that means they're going to trade Larry Markkinen right away this offseason? I don't know. He only has his salary's non-guaranteed for next year, but he's functionally an expiring contract. Now, if they do extend him, pay him, that opens up a whole world of different discussions. But the way that they've carried themselves under Danny Ainge, with the exception of maybe the John Collins trade, it just leads me to believe that no, this is like more of a long haul rebuild, and that the fact that they were so good after the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades, that was more of I guess it's a miscalculation on their part. They clearly didn't expect to be that good. And just because they're not going to course correct from it. And I think that's where I'm landed.
That's interesting. We should keep track of this. I think they are going to, well, I guess it doesn't answer the question because it's like, will he be on the next playoff team? Like, I'm not super comfortable because of the rookie stuff I mentioned, like laying out when I think that's going to be. I kind of think they are going to keep Markkinen around. I think a renegotiate and extend is like very much on the table. I think I'm okay paying him $30 million a year.
Oh no, I'm okay. But if you're a team like the Jazz and do you constantly want to have to go through these cycles where you're trading yourself out of not having a bottom 10 pick?
Yeah, I think I
Top
don't know.
10
I guess
pick,
maybe
sorry. I'm
no, I think 2 years is like kind of a long time for a small to mid-market team, and they've got all their picks hoarded. So it's like I could see them wanting to next year, and this again depends on how good's George, like how much more is Hendricks going to play? Like, can Kessler be like a full-time starter all the time again? Is he a real cornerstone piece quietly? Like his rim protection numbers are back up kind of close to where they were last year when they were elite. Um,
And
I
by the way, I
I
will say Keontae George looks like he could be that dude
I think he
lately.
might
Like
be
the way
that
he's
guy.
getting to his spots and
Yeah.
hitting shots.
I think he's legit. Again, don't know yet. Like a full season on a team that's playing for, trying to win is going to tell us a lot more. I don't know. I don't have a lot of reasons behind it. I just think like you get a guy like Markkanen in Utah. I know Trader Danny is going to want to make moves and be opportunistic. Like who knows what kind of offers are going to come in, but like I think you hold on to that guy because like it's very difficult to sign guys in Utah. If you manage to trade for someone, you probably want to hang on and build through the draft. They got their picks from the Gobert and Mitchell deals. Like
And yeah, this is
this
not
doesn't
I
need to
don't
go on that much longer. I guess that this being the like
th-
we're kind of in between tearing it down, but like oh we're kind of good. I think you shift into a higher gear next year.
I think I would probably do that if I were them. I just don't think are they gonna if you're gonna pay Larry Markin, which I think is fine, and I'm not trying to imply that he's not happy in Utah. He seems very happy in Utah. But if you're going to pay him, then you need to make the next move soon. Otherwise, what's the point of paying him?
Yeah, yeah,
And I just don't see them consolidating their picks into a big name that becomes available. And even if it is the bit like Mikal Bridges is not the next number one star for this team because I don't think Mikal Bridges is a number one star. And
right.
so now you're saying then that they're going to, if they're not going to trade for that next number one option, that they have to already have him or they're going to draft him. Could they already have him? Keontae George gives them a chance because it's not going to be, I love Taylor Hendricks. Walker Kessler's really good. They're not going to be number one options. And I think Larry Markkanen can settle into number two, number three. He'll be fine. And if you don't think they're going to trade for them, getting him in the draft, though, becomes a lot harder when you have Larry Markkanen.
That's true. That's true. I know. I mean, that's why it's a good question. I think that the Utah has got a lot of ways it could go. I mean, what if isn't it also simple if George really is just like, oh yeah, we got him. He's the guy. We're all squared away now, and we don't care how bad our draft picks are or which convey and which don't because we've got our core. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. You want to hit some of these other ones here? They all kind of overlap a little bit, but
yeah. So at Chaco_Mike0, is Danny Ainge actually a good GM exec? Asking since the decision of tanking a season at the trade deadline feels like the Jazz have too many options, and their fault is that they haven't chosen one.
I mean, I still say a pretty resounding yes. Not aggressively tanking the year Wembanyama is going to be the first pick stands out as like a pretty significant mistake, I think.
They clearly thought they were, though. I don't care what they tried to spin it. I don't care what they said through reporters. They had no idea they were going to be that good. They had no idea.
They should have actively started the teardown / sabotage much sooner. Like the second they realized like we're pretty good, this is a problem. I don't know. I don't care what you have to do. It's even easier to say it now that Wembanyama is what he is, but like even then it was like this is the draft where you really want to be way up high. But like I don't know. I mean, his track record in Boston is so good. Like
look at what you have to. This is sort of does OKC have too many draft picks? Look at what he got for Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and it hasn't even been too full. Let him go through his third. It's technically his third offseason, but like there was the teardown. Then there's that first. Like we're not even in offseason 2 of the rebuild. Is my point.
Yeah. And like it's not just Utah. Like the Celtics were there were like 5 iterations of the Celtics while he was there, and they were all good. Like he just like I'm yes, he is a really good general manager / executive.
Do you want to ask me since I did some preliminary research on it, the final? We have 2 more, but it's the last question on the list.
Sure. This is from AEC PA. Who are the Jazz going to target in the draft to pair with Keontae and Hendricks, and what young star are they going to trade Lowry for next year?
I am pinky toe deep into my draft prep, which is to say I have not started it, but they need to target wings.
Yes.
And so, like, I apologize for any mispronunciations here. Mattis Buzelius intrigues me based off what I've read about him. Is he too big to defend wings, though? Ron Holland is someone who I like based off what, again, I've read about him. I've not watched any of these guys, but is he going to go too high? The Jazz kind of maybe have the juice to trade up if they keep their own pick, and they got that least favorable pick from the Raptors. Johnny Furphy could be worth looking at, but like I want to see them go get wings. Now, if they're looking to trade, I think what this goes back to the other question from Chaco_Mike, where you look at the Jazz having too many options. The fact they have so many assets allows them to create their own trade market. And so if you are going to go the trade route, let's get wings who fit our timeline and who maybe aren't necessarily available. And that's, oh, okay. Could you get Asar Thompson if the Pistons really want to look at Larry Markkinen over the offseason? If the Heat want Larry Markkinen, can you get Jaime Jaquez? If the Thunder want Larry Markkinen, how about Cason Wallace and Lou Dort? Do the Spurs want Larry Markkinen? Can you go the Jeremy Sohan plus picks route? Those are just names. I'm trying to think of young guys that wouldn't traditionally be available, but you have the picks to get in there. I do love, I'm not trading Larry Markkinen for him, and I don't really necessarily know that they would want him. Tari Eason would be another name if he's healthy. Those are just some guys that I feel like fit the timeline that if the Jazz wanted to not lean too far into the immediate, but they are making consolidation, then I would just be like, hey, could you get these guys? Now, a lot of them, again, Asar Thompson, Jaime Jaquez, you're not getting them probably anyway, but unless you put Larry Markkinen on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last one here from Ross Hunneds. How good is Colin Sexton?
Well, he's one of the most efficient pull-up three-point shooters in the league, pull-up jump shooters in the league this year. I also think what's always been an understated part of his game is the stuff he brings downhill. And he's always been a pretty good plug-and-play shooter, but just the downhill playmaking. The fact that his pull-up jumper has come around this year, let's see if it sustains. He's at above 34% on off-the-dribble threes specifically, which I think is still a more important shot than getting into the mid-range. And then just looking at his contract is just like, it's super reasonable. So if you wanted to, I think you could get like more than a first-round pick for Colin Sexton. I'm not saying you're getting 2 firsts, but you're getting a first-round pick and something else. Is it a player? Like, is it another heavily protected first-round pick? And I'll throw this number out there because I saw your face. Here's everyone matching Colin Sexton's usage rate, assist percentage, and true shooting percentage, which is above 60 this year, with a turnover rate below 12. Embiid, Joel Embiid, Devin Booker, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's the type of season he's having.
That's compelling. That's compelling. I think, do you think he's a starter on a good team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's one of those players where I feel like he doesn't have to start. Like, let's use Naz Reid as an example. Different players. Let's use Malik Monk as an example. Like, I think he could start on a good team, but he doesn't have to. He has a type of game that lends itself to, okay, well, if we extrapolate this and do we want him even playing 35 minutes? And it's because he's not, when you're not a lead playmaker, it does make it more difficult to say, well, then he should be starting. But can he start? The answer to me is absolutely yes. Like, he's already, like, we've seen, like, he's at 30 minutes a game post All-Star break, and he's still tearing it up. So this is someone who could shoulder. I think the bigger question is, can he close on a good team? And the answer to me is just yes. I think he can.
Okay. I think he's obviously the numbers are there, like really underrated, efficient shooter and scorer. I think the reason you have to ask, how good is Colin Sexton? Like, the reason that question gets asked, I think, is because, like, there are warts, like, not a good defender, undersized.
He's one of the players that, like, he can look like a good defender.
No, that is absolutely. He's got the floor slapping, the snarling, like the whole bit. He's got like the Pat Bev demeanor, but like he's just objectively not a good defender and really hasn't been. And part of that's size, and part of that's just like some guys aren't good defenders. So that's why I was asking the starter on a good team thing, because he feels like an elite, like, bench guy, like who's going to come in and be one of the best scorers, you know, off the bench in the league, who could start and could close for you because the offense is so legitimate. But I like, there's a reason that question is asked that way, I think, and why it gets asked a lot, like not just this question, but it's always like, oh yeah, it, like, remember when, like, he was coming off when he was, what was he? He was Well, I guess he was traded to Utah, but it was like there was a stat out there like there's 3 guys that he averaged like 24 or
Yeah, he averaged like
22 a
24
game.
points on like 50% plus
Yeah.
shooting from 2 and hit a bunch of his threes, and it was just
And yet not highly coveted. And so it's like, what gives? Like, that's why we asked the Colin Sexton question, because it's not as simple, I don't think, as like oh, look at those offensive numbers. Like, there's something else that teams are not sold on,
he
which I
and
think is the defense and the size.
this was no doubt impacted because of his injury situation too, but because of the
Yes.
way that like perception, I don't even know that it shifted, but it was always just it felt like it skewed more adverse than not, or averse than not for him. He's one of those rare, oh, this was a really good player on a rookie scale who probably got more valuable when he signed his second contract, like non-star division.
Yeah.
Because like 2
Never
years
happened.
and he's at like 2 years and 37 million left on his deal. That's a really good contract
Yeah.
for what he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, that's right.
That does it for all the questions. Thank you for all the questions. And we move on to so we have guess a player. We've already gone for long. So do you want to do 2 each?
Sure. All right. You ready? I got some from Mike Hernishin here.
Hit me.
All right. Clue number 1. Fresh off winning an NCAA title in my junior year, I was selected in the lottery by Minnesota in the mid-2000s. I would tell you who was picked before and after me, but I don't think Dan would know who either of them are. Shots fired. But I was picked before future All-Star Danny Granger. Let's see. When was
there?
I think Granger's like, well, I don't want to give you clues. So he's won a national title, Wolves pick in the lottery, mid-2000s.
Mid-2000s. I should just throw like a Wally Serbiak. That was 90s. Never mind.
Too early. I like your look. You're
was he traded there, or was he traded? I don't know.
I can't remember. Number 2, my college team was so dominant that 3 of my teammates were also selected in the first round with me. I was the last one in the group. Now I'm trying to think. I think I could think of 2 of them. All right. Oh, that's interesting. 3 were selected before him. Interesting. All right. Clue number 3. I broke into the starting lineup during my rookie year, starting the last 12 games of the season. I finished the season averaging 7.9 points per game in 79 games, shooting 37% from deep. I don't know how much that helps you.
It doesn't.
4, I regressed in my sophomore season, averaging 5 points a game, only playing 37 games and not starting any. Going the wrong way for this guy.
Still nothing.
In clue 5, in year 3, I started a career high 24 games and averaged 14.9 points a game. But the next year I had the yips and fell back out of the everyday rotation.
Mid-2000s. What? Who is this? I got nothing.
Okay. Clue 6. This was when the Wolves decided to hit the ejector button as I was traded at the deadline with Calvin Booth for Bobby Brown. That is a name I have not thought of in a long time.
So he went to the Kings? Then was Bobby Brown coming from the Kings on that one?
It doesn't say.
All right. Carry on.
Remember. Okay, you get a year now. Clue 7. In 2009, I signed with the Rockets, but was cut on the second day of training camp. Were you paying attention to Rockets training camp cuts in 2009?
No.
All right. Clue number 8. That was the last anyone heard of me in the NBA as I went on to play in the then named D League, the Philippines, France, the D League again, Brazil, and then Lebanon.
Nothing.
Clue 9. I was part of the inaugural Big 3 season. The league of retired players started up by Ice Cube.
Who is this? I got.
It's tough. This is clue 10, which is the last clue, but I'll throw you some more after this one. 10. While some people would blame my inconsistency from game to game, bad defense, and poor shot selection as the reason I washed out of the league at age 25, to this day, I am convinced it's because I was dating a Kardashian and teams felt that it was a distraction.
Chris Humphries?
No, that I didn't know this guy was linked to the Kardashians. Okay. If I gave you the college, which is North Carolina, would that help you?
Tyler Hansborough? Was he linked to the
very different person from Tyler
Sean
Hansborough.
May? Why would he be linked to the Kardashians?
No, it's
not. Jason Capel? Probably too early.
I think Sean May and is it Ray Felton were on that team, or is it Ty Law? I can never Ray Felton and Ty Lawson like get confused in my mind. I think two of those three, Sean May for sure was on that Carolina team. I believe
Shabazz Muhammad?
No, that he's a UCLA.
Damn it.
I believe this guy was the person who assisted Gerald Green in the cupcake dunk. Like he was on the court for the. Not doesn't help you.
No.
Guy wore a headband. Everybody was wearing headbands in the early 2000s. Trying to think what else. I mean that there's not a lot to know about this guy. He was,
just give it die fail.
I am Rashad McCants.
Yeah, I never would have gotten that one.
That's tough. That's tough. Like 2.5 years of not a lot. All right. You wanna give me one, or you want to redeem yourself?
Yeah, I'll give you one from Rubik's Gal. Guess the team, the Fast and the Furious edition.
There's
clue
themes.
1.
Okay.
In this paradigm, athleticism took precedence over fundamental skills. Fast breaks were preferred to set plays, and dunking trumped the dump shot. The jump shot.
Wait, I'm guessing a team?
Yes.
Like okay. I don't wait. So this is okay, sure. What's the next clue?
Clue number 2. Coach Guy Lewis encouraged his team to play a frenetic, playground-inspired style of ball directly opposed to polished and methodical style espoused by basketball traditionalists, not just condoning dunks, but insisting that his team look for high percentage shots like fast break dunks as often as possible.
I mean, like, so there's like, what is it? The Loyola Marymount teams from whenever that was, the like 80s Nuggets. I don't know. I'm trying to think of teams that ran all the time. All right. I got nothing.
Clue 3. They are widely credited with bringing the above the rim style of play to college ball. Their March Madness runs helped establish the NCAA tournament as a major television event, setting national television records for college sports viewership. I did not realize, even though I said it was March Madness theme, that this was a college team.
Oh boy, we're getting farther and farther from my wheelhouse. Is a college team. So it's like if dunks are a thing, this is long, long ago.
I wonder if I just gave you the players that were on it, if you could even guess the college.
I mean, maybe it depends on how long ago it is. Are there more clues before you just?
Yeah,
give me
you got 2 more.
All right, give me the 2 more clues.
Clue 4. They advanced in 3 consecutive Final Fours in the 80s, losing to James Worthy and a young shooting guard in their first go-around, and going one step better the next year, losing to the Jim Valvano coached NC State on a last-second dunk in the finals, and following that up with another visit to the finals, only to be thwarted by Patrick Ewing's Georgetown Warriors.
I had a VHS tape with the play in question against the Valvano team on it. Is it Indiana?
No.
I think like isn't Keith Smart involved somewhere? Because Valvano was what, NC State? I think. Man, I could just be like really showing my
Valvano was NC State. That was in the clue 4. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay. The last second dunk, I can like picture it happening. Okay, what's the next one?
5th and final clue. Dubbed the greatest team to never win it, they were officially the Houston Cougars, but they are better known as this nickname coined by Houston's Post sports writer Thomas Bonk. I like that last name. And trademarked by the University of Houston.
All right, so this is the Phi Slamma Jamma team with Ralph Sampson and I guess Olajuwon
and Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I mean, is so Phi Slamma Jamma was what we were looking for?
That or the team is Texas's tallest fraternity was also listed.
Oh, all right. News to me.
I never would have gotten that one if it makes you feel better, which you probably shouldn't because it's me. So,
all right, I got a couple here. I don't want to softball you completely. Oh, there's one that's interesting. A couple players I haven't thought of in a long time. Okay, I'm gonna give you. Oh, we may have done this guy before, but I believe you're going. You're going to get him. Clue number 1. I was a second-round draft pick in 2003 out of Creighton.
All right, cool.
I'm pausing because I thought you might get it because Creighton has not had a lot of NBA players.
I'm trying. 2003. Kyle Korver. He didn't go to
Bang!
great.
One
Oh,
and
what?
done.
Really?
You
Was
got
that
it.
him?
Yeah, you got it. Sorry, Mike. I'll read. Let's see. I'll read a few more clues. So, you know what? I'll just give you. You know, there are a lot of clues here. 14 clues, and they're lengthy and filled with information. Should I read some of them? Just because Mike.
Yeah, he put in the legwork.
All right. Yeah. Number 2, I was selected by the Nets, who were in a financial bind, so I was traded to a division rival for $125,000, which was used by the Nets to buy a photocopier. Would that have triggered you? I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
would have known that one if I didn't get it on the.
Let's see. Years later, I would say at my graduation ceremony, the trade was a huge motivator for me because that machine broke years ago and I'm still playing. Averaged 4.5 points a game as a rookie. Played all 82 next year. Set the franchise record at the time for threes in a season at 226. Signed a God, these numbers from not that long ago seem insane. Signed a 6-year, $25 million contract that offseason. Following season, I was sent to Utah for Gordon Gierczak. Why are so many guess players traded for Gordon Gierczak? Let's see.
Did he play with Greg Buckner at all, or?
Oh, you know what? I don't see a Greg Buckner mention in here. My last game was during the bubble for the Bucks. Forgot about that. After Cleveland, traded back to Utah for.
Do you remember when he ended up on the Bucks and people were like, "Oh my God, Giannis is going to become like the greatest 3-point shooter alive because Kyle Korver's his teammate."
Right. Because that's how it works. Like you get one good shooter on a team, and
it's like they Space Jammed it. Like if you hold the same ball, his skills were transferred.
All right, I want to give you another one because you're hot, so we got to keep it going.
Well, let's do yours first.
Right.
I'm laughing at the player, and you'll know why once we're done.
Oh boy.
Clue number 1: I was drafted outside the lottery in 2009, a draft known for having insane point guard talent.
All right, so that's the Steph, Johnny Flynn, Ricky Rubio draft, I think. Okay.
Clue number 2: I was one of 12 point guards taken in round 1 in that draft and part of a stretch of 5 straight picks being point guards.
Ooh, 5 straight picks, but outside the lottery?
Correct.
Oh, did I say this person? Is it Ray
That's not
Felton?
part of the clues, Grant.
Is it Ray Felton?
No, it's not Ray Felton.
Is it Ty Lawson?
It is Ty Lawson.
Yeah. Where was he drafted?
I was a college legend at a blue blood school. At sub 6 foot, many questioned if I had staying power in the league, but I became a regular starter right away. By year 3, I was averaging 16 a game and 6.5 assists. My best season came in 2013-2014, where I averaged 17.6 points and nearly 9 assists a game, while also averaging 1.6 steals. The next season, the team I was on took a nosedive, and the coach was fired after saying for weeks he couldn't relate to millennial players. Safe to say a rebuild was afoot, so I was traded in the offseason for, get this, Joey Dorsey, Nick Johnson, Kostas Papanikolaou, Pablo Prigioni, legend, a 2016 first-round pick, and cash. I went on to average 6 points a game before being bought out. I signed with Indiana, but didn't really do much there in the 13 games I played that same season. And I had a decent bounce-back season in Sacramento before ultimately heading overseas, where I still play today.
I remember that.
Good for him. I'm glad he carved out a career overseas. I don't pay attention to that stuff generally.
No. We were at the end of the podcast, so I can say
I feel bad for Mike that we both got them so early, but he did stump me on the first one. So kudos.
You want another one here?
All right, give me one more.
All right. Let's see. We did Korver. Okay. Clue number 1: I was a second-round pick out of Duke in 2002 by the Cavs. I love it that people give you college questions.
Yeah, I don't know that Chris Duhon.
Ooh, no. Number 2: I averaged 10 points as a rookie to go with 7 boards, upping that to 15 and 11 in year 2. So this guy's doubling out of Duke in his second year.
In what was the year?
It would have been, I guess, like 03, 04. I think you're going to get it on the next clue.
All right, give me the next clue.
Clue 3: Cleveland forgot how restricted free agency worked after my second season, and the Jazz pounced on their tomfoolery, snatching me up for 6 years and $70 million that offseason.
In 2005? Fuck was that? Why do you think I was going to get this?
I thought you'd remember the Cavs botching free. What was it though? It was something funky where Utah just swooped in on this guy and Cleveland somehow Cleveland is at the absolute nadir of like functional NBA teams at this stage. So like they totally blew something with free agency and like let a really good player get away. You will get this guy. All right, so he's in Utah now after Cleveland, and he's a double-double guy out of Duke. Clue 4. I made 2 All-Star games in my 6 years in Utah, which were in 07 and 08.
Paul Millsap? No.
Too early. Making 3rd team All-NBA in 2008.
How do I not know who this person is right now?
I think if let's see, he doesn't give you if he gave you a certain teammate, I think you would have it. Okay. Yeah, you may still get it here. Clue 5. In 2010, I was acquired by the Bulls in a sign and trade, but my production was on the decline.
Carl Boozer.
Correct.
Damn. I should have known that one. And once you had the 6 years and 70 million, I should have known that one. You were right.
Do you remember what happened with this is a long time ago, the free agency thing? I can't remember the specifics.
That they forgot how restricted free agency worked?
I think it was like, the offer sheet got signed and they like forgot to match or like didn't. I don't know, something like some kind of weird oversight.
So I guess. So what did they do? It was the reality of it was I was 2nd round pick, so I had a 2-year contract with an option for a 3rd year, and they had so it was that like what is now known as baseball, not as now known, but like so when you have the Pelicans just did this with Herb Jones, so he was coming off of his 2nd year. They declined his team option and then agreed. He technically a restricted free agent, but he re-signed automatically. So they made him a free agent, and then he got an offer that they couldn't afford to match because of cap. It was them. They didn't want to pay it, I'm assuming. So, and at that point, I don't know if the Gilbert Arenas rule was in effect. It must have been because Arenas was earlier. So yeah, they just cheaped out.
Didn't that happen wasn't Jokic in that situation? Whereas like, do they or don't they pick up his option because it's a 2nd rounder thing? Because if they do, then he can get to unrestricted free agency. But if they decline it, he becomes restricted. And so they want to maintain control. Yeah.
So they didn't even forget how restricted free agency was because if that was post Gilbert Arenas, I think like what year did you say that was?
He was an 02 draft pick. So would have been, when the hell was Arenas? I think Arenas was right after that because I think Arenas went to Washington in like 03 or 04 or something. I could be wrong.
Yeah. So this is what Boozer said on. The reality of it was I was a 2nd round pick, so I had a 2-year contract with an option for a 3rd year, and they had discussed taking my option away so they could re-sign me. The only bad thing about it was that it would be tampering and the Cavs are going to be under investigation. So when we went through the process, they took away my option. They wanted to give me a new contract. The league knows everything. So when they took away my 3rd year option, they were going to offer me a deal around 40 million. But the league was also getting indication that there was 4 other teams that were offering to pay me 70 million plus. So if I would have re-signed, they would have immediately known it was tampering.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have to read a couple of these other clues because they're worth it. The next clue, which you did not need because you got it. In 2010, I was acquired by the Bulls, traded my production on the decline. 6. Despite averaging around 15 and 9 in my time with Chicago, my most notable moments are probably having spray on hair. Remember that? And accidentally punching a ref in the nuts. Remember that video? How funny that one is?
No, I don't remember that one.
I think he's like celebrating an and one or like protesting a call, and he like swings around on the baseline with like a I don't know, like you're trying to punch someone in the nuts basically, and there was in fact someone in the way, and it was the ref, and
I'm watching it now.
You remember that? That was a great one.
I've never seen this video before. I'm not even kidding.
The last one, my twin sons are top recruits for 2025. If you're, oh yeah, get it up there.
Wait, so I'll restart it for people watching on YouTube. This is wild. It's replay. Here it comes.
Yeah, and one, bang!
Oh my god!
And he yells in his face afterwards. Oh, it's so good. Also, the loudest yeller of and one in NBA history. That was Boozer.
You don't think Melo can give him a run for his money?
No, Boozer was the guy. I think. Well,
Melo was the rebound one.
Oh,
he was yelling rebounds. Yeah,
you had to turn the mics off because he's just cursing at every rebound he got.
That was good, Mike. Thank you you provided the heavy lifting for this guess a player. So yeah. Thank you.
Excellent work. I think that's going to do it. Unless you would like to add anything about Carlos Boozer punching people.
No, I think I'm.
Okay.
I can't believe. I'm sure I saw it and then forgot about it, but that's something that I should have remembered. So maybe I never saw it.
That's up there. That's better than, but similar to. I think it's after Vince Carter dunks over Frederick Weiss. He like punches the air and turns around and like is probably got Kevin Garnett's eyelashes with a celebratory punch and like almost just killed a man just because he was so amped.
Here's a funny. It's funny because everything ended up being fine. She's my wife now. My now wife.
This is a great start to his story.
The first year, so 2010, or maybe it's 11, when Amari's first season in New York, that was 2010, 2011, right? Or yeah.
Sounds right.
So he hits, it's against the Celtics. It looked like it was a game-winning 3. And we were in her room watching it, and her dad, who me and him have always had a really good rapport, but this is like, we were dating for maybe a year and a half at this point. After he's watching in their living room. So after Amari hits the shot, we're both screaming, and I jump up and fist pump and clocked my wife right across the face. And she was fine, but I didn't notice it because I ran out of the room, and me and her dad are like celebrating and like talking about it. And I come back in the room, and she was like, "You just punched me." So apparently I didn't even feel it.
You're too amped. Amari did that to people.
Oh, and wait. Here's the thing. The shot ended up not counting.
So it was all for nothing.
She was okay. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been funny at all. I want to make that clear.
Right. So you can't tell that story if one, you're not married to her now, or two, she was not okay. All right. Everyone, thanks for your questions as always, both in the Western Conference mailbag, and thank you for your contributions, Mike in particular, and Rubik's Scout for our guest players. What else? If you want to contribute, get on Discord. You can find the link on how to do that in the YouTube and podcast description, along with how to check out our merch. Some of which is behind me, some of which is probably near Dan or in the vicinity. There it is. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, rate, review, subscribe, follow us, upvote, thumbs up, all the good things.
Upvote. Are we on Reddit?
Upvoting a thing? I don't know. I like to ad lib sometimes, like positive ways to approve of and spread our content, but I don't know if upvote is like a real thing.
You could I guess you could promote us on Reddit if they let you promote, and then people can upvote it.
That is where you upvote. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Do that, I guess. I don't know. Thanks again. Shout out Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.